spiritual awakening is a progressive journey that should lead a seeker into a state of enlightenment. For Krishnaji says that human beings live and experience life only from two states. They live and experience life from a suffering state or a no suffering state. And greater awakening in consciousness only happens when you actually see the destructive impact of the suffering states that you are living from. Say suffering states of anger, of fear, of hurt, of jealousy, loneliness, hate, guilt. All these we can see it as poisons that destroy your consciousness within. And when you awaken spiritually, you are able to dissolve those suffering states as and when they arise. You are not living your life in suffering states, moving from one suffering state to another. It's just not movement in suffering state, but you break out of it. And to us, to take the journey of enlightenment, we see it as the only panacea for this disease. We can call this the disease of suffering that is afflicting your consciousness now. And when you do awaken to extraordinary states, say of peace, love and compassion, that is when this world would become a better place. The way you experience life would be better. And for greater clarity on enlightenment itself, it is a state where you are totally and completely free of suffering. It is a state of great peace within that is born out of dissolution of all cravings and obsessions that rage in your consciousness. Enlightenment is also a state where your sense of separation dissolves and you experience a state of oneness. It is a state of great compassion that arises from the space of oneness. It is a journey of a seeker to move towards enlightenment and to be awake from being submerged in the disease of suffering.
Welcome to the Awakening Entrepreneur Podcast. This show is for entrepreneurs that have chosen to define their life beyond the material. They have followed their soul on a hero's journey towards the mystery of the spiritual. I'm your host, Garrett Ng. Each episode will be learning from awakened entrepreneurs and spiritual thought leaders. They have broken through the mold of being ordinary to extraordinary, challenging our paradigm, shining lights to the dark, giving hope when there is doubt. The moment of truth is upon us. It is time to transcend our world from fear to love. Are you ready? Let's go! Welcome to this week Awakening Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, I have a great pleasure of introducing you to probably one, if not the most influential person, at least in instigating and also assisting me in my awakening journey. Her name is Sri Krishnaji. She's the co-founder, along with her husband, Krishnaji, of Ekam, which is a consciousness movement. Or I guess the way that I will look at it is they are helping to raise consciousness through Ekam, through the program they offer in Ekam. And they also have a physical campus in Chennai, India, called Ekam as well, to raise consciousness in this world. She's also a creator of Breathing Room, which is one of the leading meditation platform out there that you can download in both Android and Apple. And along with all that, through a lot of their work they do in the communities is to spread like kindness and love. And so together with Krishnaji and her daughter Loka, she's involved with many charitable initiatives involving education, afforestation, providing safe water, safe drinking water, and reviving ancient culture in thousands of villages around the campus in India. This is no small feat. Like we've had the privilege of visiting some of the villages villages in India, and compared to the West, a lot of them are just the basic needs are not being met. And so good on them for like creating a lot of these initiatives as well. Preethaji is also regarded as one of the leading female philosophers of our time. Her views on consciousness and the mind, on purpose and meaning, on parents and parental prenatal wisdom, on wealth creation and cooperation in corporate settings have been revolutionary. And today I actually want to delve a lot more on the spiritual side, the spiritual awakening and consciousness side. As we know that, especially in the West, a lot of these are very little information on it. So she has addressed academic institutions and forums from all over the world. Seekers from all over the world attend her events such as like Manifest and the 5 Awakenings, which are her flagship online processes, and the Ekam Enlightenment Festival, a 7-day spiritual experience in India. Today, we get to experience a small glimpse of the meditation we can experience. But one of the things that I guess her and her husband take people through to get to this older state of consciousness, they call it is a transcendental state of consciousness. It's called the limitless field of consciousness. It's a powerful way. I don't even know how to describe it, but she brings a whole group of us into this transcendental state of consciousness. And a lot of people feel a lot of joy, peace, mystical experiences. And subsequently, after the events, life is not the same anymore. It's changed for the better. So without further ado, welcome, Preethaji.
Namaste. So wonderful to be with you, Gary.
So I really have to thank you and Krishnaji for being a big part in sparking my spiritual awakening journey. When I first started this, from my upbringing and even most of the schooling in the world, traditional schooling or personal development, I've never heard of the word like awakening or spiritual awakening. And I didn't know such a thing. And now that I look at it, the way that I see it is part of humanity's evolution. But yeah, for my own purpose of further learning more about it and for our audience, can you share what is spiritual awakening?
Let's make it true to the word. It is to wake you up from your deep slumber. You have to be awake. For Krishnaji and me, spiritual awakening is a progressive journey that should lead a seeker into a state of enlightenment. I know I've shared this with you already, but just for the sake of the audience now. For Krishnaji says that human beings live and experience life only from 2 states. They live and experience life from a suffering state or a no suffering state. And greater awakening in consciousness only happens when you actually see the destructive impact of the suffering states that you are living from. Say suffering states of anger, of fear, of hurt, of jealousy, loneliness, hate, guilt. All these, we can see it as poisons that destroy your consciousness within. And when you awaken spiritually, you are able to dissolve those suffering states as and when they arise. You are not living your life in suffering states, moving from one suffering state to another. That is anger to guilt or fear to loneliness. It's just not movement in suffering state, but you break out of it. And to us, to take the journey of enlightenment, we see it as the only panacea for this disease. We can call this the disease of suffering that is afflicting your consciousness now. And when you do awaken to extraordinary states, say of peace, love, and compassion, that is when this world would become a better place. The way you experience life would be better. And for greater clarity on enlightenment itself, it is a state where you are totally and completely free of suffering. It is a state of great peace within that is born out of dissolution of all cravings and obsessions that rage in your consciousness. Enlightenment is also a state where your sense of separation dissolves and you experience a state of oneness with all that is. It is a state of great compassion that arises from the space of oneness. It is a journey of a seeker. to move towards enlightenment and to be awake from being submerged in the disease of suffering.
So it's kind of like waking up, being a passenger and thinking that we have no way of controlling our emotions and where we're going in life. And suddenly, hey, I actually have a steering wheel in front of me. I could actually drive it if I want.
Yes, it is like for especially those people who are new to awakening and spirituality. I can say if you have to compare life before having this awakening or this movement into awakening in your consciousness and life after having experienced awakening, it is like having watched a television or having watched life in black and white. And suddenly you are seeing colors. Suddenly you're seeing colors. Life feels so much blissful. There is no pain that is hanging over your shoulders all the time. There is an experience of freedom. There is a clear direction. There is a way to look forward to life. All this is awakening, leads you. There is no comparison between a person who has lived in suffering states all through one's life and then being awakened to states of oneness and awakened to states of bliss in consciousness. And thereafter, as you said just now, Gary, life doesn't feel the same. You know what is the state that is leading you, what is the state that is pushing you towards your actions, where you're leading your life, what is the destiny you're trying to create. There is very clear perception. There is a lot of clarity about life itself.
So how do one awaken? I guess I'm asking that question is possibly two views. One is people that are hearing about this, or oneness and connected with all and having more beautiful states instead of suffering state. That sounds like a great idea. Okay, I want to awaken. How do one awaken? The other ones, like I've been observing that more and more people tend to go through an awakening basically coincided with a crisis, a health crisis, a relationship crisis, financial crisis. And that kind of, it wasn't by their own free will that they chose that I want to have a crisis, but it's almost like, is it predestined that someone is by the age of 42 that they're going to be awakened? Or so how do one, can you by your own free will, let me just work hard and do more meditation and I can awakening and connect it to all? Is it predestined?
Krishnaji and I have led thousands across the globe into states of awakening. But how does awakening happen? For awakening to happen in consciousness, one has to go through a process. Let me explain what a process is. I would say a process is a journey of truth. I always take this allegory to describe a process. The allegory of a king cobra, one of the most poisonous snakes in the world. It grows long. It grows fast to a length of, say, 12 to 18 feet. So every time it has a spurt of growth, every once in a few months, this cobra feels very uncomfortable in its own skin. And once it becomes uncomfortable in its own skin, it's not able to see, it loses its sight. And then the cobra actually goes into seclusion. It sits under the rock somewhere, away from everything. And it'll become completely blind in that process. And after about 10 days of sitting quietly that way, sight comes back. It regains a new sight. Then it sheds its old skin. Its old skin peels off and a new skin emerges. And then it gets out into the world with great vitality. That is a process. A process is where you sit down, you shed your old, you gain a vision, and you get back in the world. I would definitely not say that it is predetermined, Gary. Definitely it is not predetermined. If there is a crisis that is striking at you, not only a crisis, if there is a feeling of meaninglessness, a purposelessness, a lack of clarity, a boredom that is set into you, that means you are longing for something more greater in life. And it is necessary. It's not only for those who are feeling this, even for those who are not feeling this. When you are awakened, when you go through a deep spiritual process, it is like being able to conquer those challenges, being able to live life with greater clarity, being able to breathe air without struggling for breath. That is the experience that you will have when you go through this awakening and go through the process. I'm sure you're aware of it, that I do, especially during this pandemic when it started off in China and in Wuhan, and then the world came to a grinding halt the last year. There was an immense cry from the spiritual seekers all over the world. Not only the spiritual seekers, because it was something new that the world was not expecting. It is something, the world was not familiar with what was happening with the pandemic. And that is when we reached out to the people all over the world with a mystic process. It's called the manifest, and it happens every month. It is continuing to happen, even as world is trying to regain its lost strength and vitality. We are still taking this manifest. It's a mystic process that I lead. It is a 3.5-hour immersion in the depths of your consciousness. In the manifest process, basically, I do not believe in solving problems just at the mind level or the thought level, or even doing some energy work. I believe that solutions or dissolution has to happen at the deepest level of your consciousness. That is, you need to enter a greater realm of consciousness. And from that realm, you need to dissolve those blocks that is causing the problems. You need to harness the power of the universal intelligence or the divine, however you want to call it, to create or to manifest the synchronicities, the miracles, the life situations or solutions to problems that you need in your life. That is why thousands from around the world participate in the mystic manifest process month after month. And each of this manifests is for a particular dimension to awaken in your consciousness. Last month I led through manifest spiritual courage. Before that, it was manifest family harmony. And this month I would be leading to manifest divine protection. It has been for health, it is for manifesting your soulmate, it is for courage, it is for intelligence, it is for career growth. And each of these manifests are like processes of flowering, like opening one petal after another petal, which illuminates your life. I believe that those of you who are listening, the audience, if you feel you need to start somewhere and you really don't know where to start your spiritual journey, I would say begin with manifest a live mystical process that happens month after month. And you can join it from anywhere in the world. And it is like a deep process for 3.5 hours while you're sitting in the comfort of your home.
I'm going to share the links on the show notes and description. So if you want to learn, you can follow the links and join the course. I guess on that note, you've also got a online program called 5 Awakenings. Are there different levels of awakening?
Definitely, there are many different levels of awakening, Gary, but we can just put it in a framework for the audience to get an understanding of what are the levels of awakening. To me and Sri Krishnaji, spiritual awakening is a journey of enlightenment. And there are stages. Let me put 5 stages to you. The first stage of journey to enlightenment is to become conscious. And I would say most activists, whether they are social, political, or environmental, are trying to do this. They are actually trying to make you conscious. And when I say conscious, I'm talking about when you become conscious, you see how your behavior, how your actions are affecting the external. How your actions, how your behavior are, say, affecting your health, your career, your future generations, how it is affecting the environment. So that is the first stage on the journey to enlightenment. The second stage on the journey to enlightenment is to become aware. Here, you move your attention inward. At this stage, you begin to see that your destructive actions, your decisions are caused by your suffering states. And you begin your practice of awareness to dissolve those negative suffering states. And your authentic spiritual journey begins here. The third stage of your evolution towards enlightenment, the third stage is becoming transformed. In this stage, your heart begins to heal. In this stage, you experience the flowering of your heart. You become capable of deep feelings for another. You actually become capable of feeling what others are feeling. You actually have a birthing of love. The fourth stage on your journey to enlightenment is awakening. In this stage, you actually states beyond the mind. In this stage, you taste enlightened states. You glimpse them. Sometimes these states that you experience can stay for a few minutes, for a few hours, or even a few days. These are states you will be glimpsing. These are states that you will be experiencing as you immerse in the 5 awakenings, another journey that I lead people from around the globe. It is a 2.5-day journey, or it spreads over 5 days, depending upon which country you're joining on. For different time zones, we do. And it allows individuals to experience those profound states in consciousness. We can say glimpsing enlightened states. Even if the state fades, it would have a lasting impact on your consciousness. And these awakenings will actually set fire in your whole being. When I say set fire, I'm talking about sets fire in you becoming a seeker. You want to become enlightened. You are passionately in love with liberation and enlightenment, of which you have had a direct experience. And definitely, this is not yet another crazy becoming driven by the need to have more than someone else, or feeling more, or being more significant in the eyes, your own eyes or the eyes of someone else. This seeking that emerges from a direct experience is deep. It turns your attention inward into your consciousness. So that is the 4th stage, and that is what I lead people into. And every time I lead, I work on 5 distinct dimensions of awakening. So that's why it's called 5 awakenings. And the last one, the final stage in this journey of enlightenment, is enlightenment. And when I say enlightenment, it means a total cessation of suffering. Every root that can give birth to suffering is actually weeded out. You become free of your ego. You become free of your cravings, your karma, your mind, your ignorance, yourself itself. So many of the tendencies you feel flowing into you, maybe flowing into you from this life, maybe flowing into you from the vasanas of your earlier lifetimes. Vasana kshaya, that means weeding out of the vasanas, needs to happen in order to be enlightened. So much of purification of consciousness needs to happen, so that the seeds that cause suffering are eliminated, and then you experience an undivided oneness in consciousness. And these are the 5 stages that a seeker moves through.
So from the 5th stage of awakening, which is enlightenment, can you still fall back down to other levels?
See, what happens is the roots that move you, the roots of suffering that propels you, the roots are cut off. So the factors that push you towards suffering state doesn't have power. So in the 4th stage, when you are experiencing enlightenment, you are given the wisdom, the purification, the processes that root out the very tendency to move into suffering. So even if suffering do arise, it doesn't have strength because you are established in enlightenment.
Makes sense. So what would be the purpose of, I guess in Buddhism terms, they call it Maya. What is the purpose of this duality world, this material world? Because since it's the Buddha said is like life is suffering, like what is the purpose of this world? Is it to experience suffering? Is it go to the beach and have a good time? Like what do you see is the purpose of us being on earth?
To me, the world is not Maya or illusion, but the attachment that one has towards it. The suffering states of anger, fear, and sadness that one experiences around, say, various aspects of life. That is Maya. So Maya is not out there in the world. The world is real. Maya is your unawakened consciousness. I believe with all the uncertainties and challenges in the world, now it is time for a collective transformation in consciousness towards greater connection and a wiser purpose. And in this context, I definitely touch upon Swadharma, which ancient Hindus spoke of. To help you understand this, let me chant a verse from Gita, one of the sacred texts of the Hindus. Swadharma nidhanam shreya paradharma bhayavaha. Meaning, great well-being arises if you followed your Swadharma until your final moments. If you, however, gave into paradharma, not yours, you will live life in anxiety throughout. Swadharma is to discover and it is to live your own unique purpose on earth. Paradharma is to simply hold on to a purpose that is not true to your nature. To discover a purpose and to live it, we can say is the greatest fulfillment, or we can say it as the ultimate adventure of human life. And remember this, if you would discover your own purpose and you hold on to it very steadily and live it, then I would say your life would open up to incredible synchronicities. Synchronicities, when I use the word synchronicities, I mean meaningful coincidences that the divine or the universe will throw into your life as you live your life. If you hold on to your own unique purpose from a beautiful state, then obstacles that you face in your life would begin to give way, no matter what challenges surround you, and opportunities will come your way. If you do not have a clear purpose, perhaps you wake up every day, have the same breakfast, perform the same act of love with your dear ones, drive to work, meet same people, same parties, almost have the same conversations with your family. Without a purpose, you would probably feel a semblance of order in your external life because you're doing this over and over again, week after week, year after year. While internally, the truth is there is so much of chaos. Internally, you are besieged with questions like, why does life feel so boring? Why does life feel so mechanical? Or why am I in this relationship? Why am I not able to feel love when I'm with my partner? Why should I go through all this in my life? Why am I doing this job? Why does life feel monotonous? Why does life feel so boring? And it scares to see that you will be doing this for the next 10, 20, 30 years of your life. And life feels strenuous and difficult. If for any of you, if the why questions have begun to torment you, please understand it is a sign. It is a very clear sign that you have lost purpose in life. And that is why there is this urge, sometimes urge to quit relationship, quit job, quit location, and sometimes to quit life itself. If you want to have or live an impactful life, then I would recommend every one of you to discover your Swadharma or your unique purpose. That discovery, I would say, is very important for you.
So how would one go about in discovering the Swadharma, the purpose of life? And are you able to give some examples of what a purpose is? I don't think it's referring to like, I'm going to be an accountant, I'm good with my hands, or I'm going to, maybe it can be like, so can you give us some examples, Sri Preethaji?
Definitely. See, if you look at how the society is structured and how children are being raised in our current society, there's a lot of competition that is being installed. And say a child is choosing one particular career or one particular line of education, what is the child based that decision off? It is based off on paradharma, say it is based off on what somebody else is doing or wanting to be better than somebody else. If that becomes the sole objective, because wanting to feel significant, wanting to feel important, wanting to be successful, if that is driving what you're doing in your life, please understand the fulfillment that would emerge from that doing is very, very little, or sometimes it is very painful. When I say a purpose that emerges after you are able to feel connected to something around you, to the people around you, to the life around you. And from this state of connection, you discover a very clear purpose to life because you want to do something to create a difference in the life of the other. You want to impact somebody else's life. You want to help that person, however it can be. It can be to introduce a new product into seeing how that product actually serves to benefit so many people because they need it. Purpose is derived not from this self-centric pursuit. A purpose is derived from the space of connection. That is why I would again say that a spiritual awakening is so much needed for your life, what you're doing with your life, how you're living your life, how you'd experience fulfillment in that life. That is possible only when you are awake to a deep connection with the world, either with your family, with your community, with the people whom you work with. Once in that space of connection, from that space of connection, there would be a very clearly defined clarity of how or what you want to do with your life. And that, I would say, is your purpose. At the beginning level, of course, the greatest purpose is to be enlightened. But at least to start off and how you'll experience fulfillment in life is only by experiencing a greater connection in your heart. That is, awakening of your heart has to happen for you to experience deeper connection with the people. And from that experience of deep connection that you have, you discover what your purpose in life is. Everything else is just an input that arises from how you have been brought up or what schooling you had, what community you are in. It is just thrust upon you rather than being a discovery for you. That is, awakening of the heart, I would say, is a must for anyone who is experiencing those why questions. For anyone who is seeking to experience fulfillment in life, I would say awakening is an important step for you, because without that, you're lost.
I guess a lot of the ancients, when you look at the process of awakening, is typically associated with the pineal gland or the third eye. And I guess I didn't even know the actual mechanics of how it works, but I know that you've got a process, a 3-minute process, that if we get into a suffering state of anxiety, stress, or anger, any of these negative states, within 3 minutes of practicing your meditation, it helps us get out. I call it like the get out of jail card, like type of process. But it's also focusing on the middle part of the brain, which you call it the mid prefrontal cortex. And so it's kind of like where the pineal gland is located around those regions. So is awakening associated with the pineal gland in some shape or form?
The pineal gland decalcification is very different from the pineal activation. Calcification is calcium deposits upon the pineal glands, leading, we can say, to decrease in melatonin, causing physical problems like migraine and some sleep problems. While the pineal activation is the path of the mystic. And when there is an activation or when there is an awakening of the Kundalini or the spiritual power that is dormant in every human being, when that activation happens, then the Kundalini that is resting at the base of your body, that is coiled, rises. And when a massive awakening happens through a process, through a spiritual process, what happens is your Kundalini rushes into your Sahasrara chakra, or the crown of your head. Sahasrara chakra is supposed to represent the pineal gland, and which was also called as the third eye or the eye of wisdom. This ancient wisdom is at the heart of Raja Yoga or mysticism. Today, science, modern science, has come with a corollary to the mystic phenomenon in the brain. So science speaks of a cerebrospinal fluid that flows through the spinal cord, and as it rises to the various nerve plexus and flows into the brain, it activates the nerves and it creates spiritual experiences. So the human brain, when viewed in a cross section, actually reveals a structure that resembles human eye. In several ancient traditions, the Egyptian and the Indian tradition speak of the third eye, speak of the eye of the Horus. And these were symbolic of the mystic eye, the eye of wisdom, the eye of insight, eye of awakening in a human being. And today what science is saying is that when the cerebrospinal fluid flows into that section of the human brain which resembles the eye, that is when great transcendental and mystical experiences happen in an individual. So that is the connection between the pineal gland and the third eye and the transcendence and the mystical experiences. It happens through a process of awakening the Kundalini that is lying dormant in the base of your spine.
So is decalcifying the pineal gland, is that important?
Decalcification? Absolutely. Decalcification probably can happen through probably breathing exercises, through right lifestyle, through eating the right food. And awakening of the Kundalini or awakening happens when you go through a process that leads you into mystical experience.
Okay, I guess to clarify that, to activate, because you say it's different between decalcifying and activating the pineal gland. So to activate the pineal gland, is it a prerequisite to you need to decalcify the pineal gland?
I think it definitely would support. We just need to understand your mind, body, and consciousness are not really separate. Each one impacts the other. And when people come for tapas, right now, we have opened up the campuses for India as the situation is a little east right now. We lead people through a 42-day immersion called Ekam Tapas. And one of the prerequisites for Ekam Tapas is that they are healthy, or at least they practice a healthy lifestyle before entering into tapas, because you need to have your body. Ancient spoke of this body being a vehicle for enlightenment, and you need to treat this body with great respect and great love and great compassion for it to help experience the other world. And they're all connected again.
Got it. So when a child is born, are they already awakened and then loses the ability, or the Kundalini energy until you do certain process is always going to be dormant?
When the child is born, actually, I don't know, you have 4 children. And I'm sure it would have been a direct experience for you that when you carried your newborn child, there must have been one particular day when you picked the baby out of the baby's bed or the crib. Today is different. I'm feeling the child differently. I don't know if you've had that experience, because I've had that experience when I picked Loka one fine day when she was around 1 year old, and I carried and I said, today the baby is different. Of course, when you are born, that separation, that division, that experiences of suffering, and there is no continuation of suffering in a child. But over a period of time, suffering becomes a part. Moving into suffering states become a part. And especially if you don't have a culture that nurtures a beautiful state, you don't have a culture that glorifies living free of suffering, then it's okay for the child to feel sad. It is okay for the child to feel angry. It is okay for the child to feel guilty. You don't work on it because that has not been the focus of the society, right? You allow the child to live in that suffering state. And then slowly the child learns to immerse or continue when an external problem does surface, because there is no life without problems and challenges. But the child learns or moves into the habit of continuing it internally, moving into suffering states, wallowing in suffering states. And that becomes the way of life because everybody else around is living like that. Nobody has told the child that you don't need to spend more than what it requires, or you don't need to spend that extra minute in suffering. You need to walk out of suffering. You have to nurture a beautiful state. Nobody has given that input, and nobody has made it a way of life. And then the suffering state grows, wiring your brain, rewiring it again and again into those suffering states, and then that becomes a part of life. And in terms of Kundalini awakening, it can happen in the ancient times. How Kundalini used to awaken is they used to move into seclusion, just like how our king cobra does, moves into seclusion, moving away from all the sensory inputs. It's called pratyahara, moving away from all the sensory inputs, moving into that silence and that stillness, or through prayer, or through fasting, or through being in the nature, being in the wilderness. Kundalini has awakened, and definitely transference of diksha and transference of power from the guru to the disciple helps awaken that sleeping dormant Kundalini that is coiled in the base of your spine.
That's really interesting because I just did a podcast about rites of passage, which is, I guess, a South African or maybe Africa tradition that you go through yet fasting, seclusion, and usually for at least a few days, if not for weeks. And then we talked about maybe in American culture, they've got the vision quest, which again requires that fasting, independence, and I know that in the Chinese, they've got in the dark room, or well, back then they may not be dark room, but dark caves. And so if you were to design like a school for young kids, and not even a school, but a process for kids to grow up, would there be maybe a certain part of the growing up journey that is time for them to go through this seclusion, awakening, rite of passage, whatever you want to call it, but for them to activate the Kundalini? Or is it, you know what, like it will happen when it naturally happens? Or will you try to like...
No, I feel the problem with the world that we are seeing right now is a lack of all these traditions at this current point that we are in life. And it is very important because, see, I meet people, and I have seen people's lives, so many lives. And there is one comment that Sri Krishnaji would receive most of the times. That one comment is, if alone I had this experience, if alone I had gone through this process when I was in my 20s or earlier than that, my life wouldn't be like this. That spiritual learning, that awakening, I would say is very important in every child, because otherwise, actually the greatest pandemic that we are going to face, or we're expecting to face, is depression and anxiety in the youth. I think it's expected in the next couple of years. And it would be very sad for us to see so many young people all over the globe being lost, not knowing why they are living, not experiencing even a tiny bit of joy in the very way of living. I feel that has to change. And that is why Sri Krishnaji and I constantly bring our attention to working with the youth. Even right now, as we are speaking, we have young people in the campus who are spending 30 days going through learning, going through process, going through awakening of the heart, actually reaching out to people, serving, so that they discover there is so much more to life when you experience this awakening.
Yeah, I want to touch on, I guess it's easy to just talk the talk, but looking at your daughter Loka and how the various initiatives that she started and leading, which, as far as I know, some of them are helping the local villages. And it's incredible that her board of directors, or whatever you like to call it, her board is also made of other youth as well. It's not by adults. And together, they are helping to solve not some spiritual problem, but some real life challenges that the local villages have. And these are like nurturing, caring young people that through, I don't know whether it's through a combination of meditation, teachings. I think you said Loka didn't meditate that much, but like you guys are actually like walking the walk in creating a new world, a new world that how we could be living.
What we have seen, Gary, again and again, as you said, Loka's work is like a huge support of youth from across the globe wanting to truly help. What we have seen is when their heart flowers and when they are actually put in the situation where they are able to see the impact that they can create on another individual or another being, the fulfillment that these children learn to experience actually helps them to discover a purpose, helps them to lead their life with that same spirit of wanting to create a difference in the world. And that is what I see when the change makers come into to be with us for a period of 4 weeks, and they go through the process. They discover how beautiful it is to kind of lend one's hand to somebody else, not in the ideological or the mental level, to actually feel from the heart and do it. And they being immersed in that space of fulfillment, and then they're able to kind of lead it forward into their life, whatever they're doing. That is what we see as the impact that we are creating in the world, especially in the lives of young people.
So what are some of the practices people listening to this they can do at home or by themselves about opening their hearts?
I would say that I would ask them to immerse in a space of feeling grateful for all that they have received. And from that space of immersing their heart in gratitude, experiencing connection with someone whom they want to feel connected, or with someone whom they feel needs to experience that connection. And then to immerse in a meditation that is there in the breathing room. It's called heartfelt connection meditation. It is there in the breathing room for them to do it and allow the heart to slowly flower.
That's great. There is I guess some of the ancient and wisdom and some of the different school of thoughts have talked about there's a new earth that's been created. Eckhart Tolle talks about this as well. And that's the ascension process, which means that we are, as humanity, globally, we're ready to graduate from almost like this worldly school into something more loving. Is that something that you prescribe to, or you have a different school of thought?
The future that Sri Krishnaji and I envision for humanity is where humanity is free of suffering. Humanity is living in harmony with nature, is living in harmony with all other forms of life and with Mother Earth. This universe is one vast, infinite field of intelligence. And it is possible to connect into this intelligence, to tune into this intelligence, to create a beautiful life or a miraculous life for yourself. People come to us for both of these experiences. And we are also aiming for solving the innumerable problems of human life. That is, if you look around you, there are so many problems. See forest depleting, forest burning, ocean life depleting, water pollution. There is a health crisis. People's health is deteriorating. There is rise in depression. There is definitely a huge rise in economic uncertainty right now. We believe that a solution to all these problems has to begin with a massive awakening in consciousness. Otherwise, we will just repeat the old history again and again. And towards that vision, we want to create a phase transition in humanity's consciousness. Humanity has to awaken to a state of oneness. And for that, we believe that if 74,000 people or 74,000 enlightened beings will walk on the earth, then there would be a collective shift in human consciousness. And that is why Ekam, and that is why Ekam movement, because Ekam means the one, the indivisible. Ekam is a physical structure. It's a massive structure that is more like a powerhouse to push people into these grand states of consciousness, which is created by Sri Krishnaji, Ekam. We have many campuses over here around Ekam for people to immerse in the sacred processes to move towards oneness. And that is the vision that we have for humanity.
You say 74,000 people. How many do you think we're at right now?
74,000 people. See, we have a community of Diksha givers who are committed to creating this phase transition. And these 74,000 people, the vision is 74,000. The numbers that we are right now is around 35,000. And they are growing in their consciousness. And as they're continuing to help so many of them create a shift in their consciousness so that there is a collective shift in human consciousness itself.
I believe you've got a meditation that you can guide our audience through.
As you wanted, Gary, I will lead them through the serene mind practice. Because the greatest disease of this planet, I can say, is the suffering state. And people who are stuck in suffering state, they need a simple meditation by which they're able to walk out of the suffering state. Serene mind practice is a very simple practice. It just doesn't take more than 3-4 minutes. You can make it a little longer, but you can finish it in 3-4 minutes. You can do it anywhere. We know people who do it in the midst of an argument so that they don't build on anger. We know people do it when they are in an important board meeting because they don't make decisions arising out of fear. So this practice will help you walk out of suffering state as and when it arises. I would want every one of you to do this. And in case your suffering is too deep, definitely processes and awakening is a solution. But if you're not able to make it anywhere close to it, but at least do this practice, do it as many times as possible, nurture a beautiful state.
Yeah, awesome.
Please close your eyes. Bring your attention to your breath. Allow your breath to be deep and slow. Become comfortable in the movement of your breath. move your attention inward. What is the emotion that is arising within you right now? Name the emotion. Is it anger, fear, loneliness, insecurity, sadness? Or is it calm, peace, love, joy? Identify the exact emotion that is arising within you. Do not try to change the emotion, just observe. As this emotion is arising within you, observe the movement of your thinking. Are you obsessed with the past? Are you obsessed with the future? Or are you in the present moment? As this emotion is arising, are you feeling connected? Are you experiencing connection with the other? Or are you experiencing disconnection? Now see a light in the middle of your eyebrows. See this light move into the middle of your brain. See this light in the middle of your brain. Take a deep breath. Bring a gentle smile. Slowly open your eyes.
That's great. Thank you.
So wonderful being with you on this podcast, Gary. Congratulations on your vision to impact lives.
Thank you for all the work that yourself, Krishnaji, and the team does. I'm truly grateful for it, for my own journey, but I know that what you guys share has profound impacts for humanity. So thank you. And for those of you that want to go through the manifest or the 5 awakening course, I'm going to share the details. Or if you want to go to the website, it's ekam, ekam.org, ORG. Go to check it out. Otherwise, on YouTube and different social media platforms, they've got some cool content that comes out on a regular basis. Go experience it, as well as trying the meditation app called the Breathing Room in your app store. Thank you, Preethaji. That's been very enlightened. And I look forward to continue this awakening journey.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much.
Namaste.
Namaste.